Hello and welcome to Life Changing Radio's Weekend Magazine, the program that examines the people, places, and events that impact New England. I'm Matthew Fake. Certain illnesses are a mystery to modern medicine, frustrating doctors like a jigsaw puzzle with missing parts that cannot be solved. Two of these illnesses have seen an uptick this year, including Lyme disease and long COVID. Holistic nutritionist Danielle Pashko should know because not only does she consult with patients struggling with Lyme disease and long COVID side effects, she also has had to successfully manage both illnesses on her own. Pashko speaks here with Life Changing Radio's Randy Berkson.
First of all, what is holistic nutrition? How does it differ from, say, regular nutrition? And what makes us embrace and incorporate it into our dietary regimen?
So I think holistic nutrition really looks at the whole body. And I also, when I work with people, I like to really get an understanding of their health background, look at their blood work and really see what's going on. From a more holistic perspective, I don't think any single diet works for everybody. I think everyone is very individual. So the way that I work with them is based on their health history, their lifestyle habits, and really making things accessible in a way that they're able to incorporate in their daily lives without too much struggle. But I do use a lot of, the diet is very healthy. I'm very into whole foods. I do work with supplementation, and I really just like to make sure that I'm not just looking to work on nutrition to get somebody to a place of being thin or just taking rid of one ailment, but really to be healthy throughout their entire body.
All right, before we go any further, what made you turn to holistic nutrition for yourself?
It started off with usually everyone has a story. My mom had cancer when she was in her 30s, and she ended up passing away. And I did a lot of things in the holistic health field, but nutrition was one of them. And I think I was scared to get sick myself, and I started taking on a lot of these practices and studying and really trying to learn alternative ways to maintain health that weren't through the traditional medical system. And I think it just really directed my life path.
You have a couple of challenges, health challenges for your own Lyme disease and COVID, long COVID, as a matter of fact. We want to find out about that. How did that happen, and what happened?
Sure. So I was already practicing, and we had a lot of Lyme patients come to the clinic that I worked in. So I was familiar with a lot of the symptoms, but when I ended up getting Lyme myself, which was about 5 years ago, I never saw a tick bite. And people know about the common bullseye rash that they think occurs with a Lyme disease infection, which doesn't have to happen. So I never saw the bullseye rash. And I just started experiencing very strange symptoms like blurred vision and dizziness and fatigue and light sensitivity and neurological issues and brain fog. And it took about a year to diagnose. And by the time it was actually diagnosed, it became chronic. And that happens to a lot of people if they don't treat it right away. So I ended up going a little bit of the traditional route. I did the antibiotics, but it wasn't enough. Once it becomes chronic, you need to use other interventions. So I ended up using more nutritional therapies, a lot of supplements, a lot of other therapies like ozone and IV therapy, and I can go through the list. But I ended up going into a remission, which was pretty remarkable, and I was feeling really well. And I was celebrating that. And then about a year later, COVID came, and I wasn't even really afraid of COVID. I thought that I was in a good place and I was healthy. I didn't consider myself immunocompromised, but I guess I did have a compromised immune system. And I had a very mild case of COVID. And after the infection, I thought it would just be, 10 days not feeling well. Symptoms continued to linger, and it was almost like it reactivated my Lyme. And it felt like the Lyme disease, but even worse. And I was having all these issues. And so I ended up retracing my steps and going back to doing the things that I did when I had the Lyme, amongst other things. And I've really gotten a handle on my symptoms and able to manage them. And
excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. What
Sure.
You say you're doing things. What things? Can you mention a couple?
Sure. I did a lot of ozone therapy.
What is ozone therapy?
So
For those of us who don't. Yeah, go ahead.
So ozone is it's like oxygen that can be infused into your body. And there's a few ways they can infuse it into your blood, which is, there's something called a 10-pass ozone where they take your blood out and then they infuse it with the ozone and then they put it back into your veins and it gets circulated back into your bloodstream. That's one way. And there's also something called direct DIV ozone, direct intravenous ozone, which is more like an IV where they're just injecting ozone right into your veins. And I don't recommend it for everybody. I think some people have success, some people don't. But it can be a very good therapy for getting rid of a lot of inflammation, viruses, which become reactivated when you have the COVID infection. I feel a lot of the long COVID patients actually probably had viral infections from a long time ago that became reactivated. So this helps with that. And also hyperbaric oxygen is something that has been successful. I probably did about 50 sessions. And if you have any neurological issues, it really floods oxygen to the brain. So that was something that was very helpful. But also then there's compression therapy, which was really something that helped to work very well. It works to regulate blood clots that you have to be concerned about with COVID, pain. It can regulate blood pressure and heart rate. Also mushroom therapy, that was one of the best for me. AHCC is a mushroom extract from shiitake mushrooms. It's known, and mushrooms are known for their healing properties, but this specific extract is more potent than just eating shiitake mushrooms. It actually is. It modulates the immune system. It helps with inflammation, and it works as a prebiotic to help with gut health. So those are three things I really look for when working with people: inflammation, gut health, and modulating the immune system.
These are very specialized and highly technical types of treatment. How does an ordinary person like me, for instance, how would one know what to do? How do you find out about all these things?
A lot of these things people don't know about, but you can do them on your own. For example, compression therapy, you could buy compression boots on Amazon. They go from very high level. There's a brand called Normatec that is very expensive, super compression boots, or you can buy a pair on Amazon for $100. And there's some brands that work really well. So it's not something that's too expensive and out of reach.
Is there a place where, like a clearinghouse, where somebody with these symptoms, somebody with a Lyme problem, with a COVID problem, where does one turn to even find out about all this?
Well, I think the first thing they should do if they're looking for someone who has any idea is probably if they go to their general practitioner, they may not be aware of some of these alternative therapies. I would say look for potentially a functional medicine practitioner or a naturopath, or even someone who works with chronic illness, or if it's Lyme disease that you're dealing with, is Lyme literate. So they usually have an understanding of these types of therapies and treatments that are that can be accessible. It's just knowing how to find them.
We're gaining insight into how to manage long-term after effects from illnesses like COVID or Lyme disease with the help of holistic nutrition, as nutritionist Danielle Pashko is speaking here with Life Changing Radio's Randy Berkson.
That could be a project for an ordinary person like myself. So how were you able to help your patients with Lyme and long COVID?
So I really work on some of the things that I was discussing. I work with them on nutritional therapies. An anti-inflammatory diet is very important because inflammation is a big part of COVID and also Lyme disease. So eliminating processed foods, we all know that's not good for us, but inflammatory triggers like fried foods, and also taking out wheat and gluten and sugar and dairy and too much caffeine, which is going to aggravate the nervous system, and really start to have more healthy foods like colorful fruits and vegetables and wild fish, and healthy fats like olive oil and avocado and grass-fed meats and poultry, and even green juices. These are things that actually can help the body, help the gut health. And so that's one part of it. That's the nutritional aspect. And then I also recommend these other therapies, like I was mentioning, like the compression therapy, using mushroom therapy, which I think is really unique. I also work with other practitioners because nutrition helps, but it's kind of a multifaceted approach. You need kind of a team to be able to help you. So acupuncture is actually covered through insurance a lot of the time, and it's really great for all of these symptoms. Pain, anxiety, brain fog, helping digestion, which are all things that become impaired. Even doing a yoga practice at home. I taught yoga for 20 years, and more than 20 years, and yoga is really great because you can become very tired from these syndromes, and you don't want to exhaust yourself. So yoga is very restorative. It helps with the breathing. It helps to calm the nervous system. So I think that's a very good thing to do. And also, I talk a lot about meditation and also prayer. You don't have to be a religious person, but just really getting into a good mindset where you have gratitude and you really trust that healing's occurring. Your brain's very powerful. So the more you can get into a place where you actually have belief systems that you're healing and you can see it and you can visualize it is really important.
So how strict does somebody have to be in order to make progress and progress out of these medical situations?
So in the beginning, I would say try to stick to a routine and plan it out for yourself. I think it's very important to have rituals, but you don't have to be a purist. I think that's not sustainable. I just think you want to try in the beginning as you're first climbing out to do everything as well as you can. And then eventually, as you start to see improvements in your health, you can start to back off a little bit and be a little bit more relaxed about how disciplined you are. It's just a matter. It's like anything. You start off hot when you're first doing it, and then you go into a maintenance. So it's kind of like that with this situation.
Can you say right now where you are with these long-term effects from Lyme and COVID? Have they been dealt with effectively, would you say?
Definitely dealt with effectively. Do I have flares? Yes. There is no cure for long COVID at the moment, but there are ways to manage it. So I really have to make sure that I do these things. Self-care has become a major priority. It always has been, but especially now. And thank God I'm able to live a functional, normal life. And when it first happened, it was pretty debilitating. So I'm happy to be at the place I am. And I think within even more time, I will get back to that same remission that I did with Lyme disease.
So where are you with your long COVID, and what are you doing to manage it specifically? Can you say, are there a lot of things, or are there just a few things?
The things that I mentioned, like the compression and the mushroom therapy and also the anti-inflammatory diet, acupuncture, yoga, meditation, prayer, all those things work. And then additionally, how I mentioned in the beginning, there are some other therapies if you want to go a little deeper, like using ozone or even red light therapy or hyperbaric oxygen. There's so many things. It really depends on your symptoms.
I think we touched on this earlier. Where would somebody, a novice like myself, where would we go? Online, to the doctor, to find out how to deal with this?
Well, I think if you are interested in any of the therapies, if you're interested in someone like myself, my contact info is pashkowellness.com, and I can be a resource. If someone's interested in using nutritional therapy like mushroom supplementation and looking at the studies, I would say there's a lot of good research for Lyme and long COVID at ahcc.net.
Would you know how many holistic nutritionists like yourself are there around the country or in certain parts of the region? You mentioned your clinic where you were working. Where is that?
It's on West 74th between Columbus and Central Park West.
Oh, so you're right in the middle of Gotham, I guess, is what
yeah, I mean, it's a little off the beaten path.
So people with Lyme disease in the middle of Manhattan, I didn't think that was possible.
Well, they're not getting into Manhattan, and that's the problem. People are going to, places outside the city, upstate, Westchester, Long Island. They're going to Connecticut, Maine, and then they're coming back to places like Manhattan, or they live in states like Florida, where I am a lot, that people don't have Lyme disease at all, and they're totally not diagnosed. So they come back with it. Manhattan, you don't see a lot of Lyme happening here, but people who live here have houses other places.
Can you say before we go, what is there one single lifestyle change that you were able to make that helped you the most?
The lifestyle change that I think is really important, you have to prioritize sleep, and that's all of these things work and they're great, but you must make sure that you prioritize sleep, because that's when really the healing occurs.
Wow. Okay. And finally, again, where do they go? Where do we go for more information?
You can go to pashkowellness.com. And also another good resource is ahcc.net.
And that stands for?
I can tell you what it stands for, but you have to make sure that you're using the branded form of it. And if you use the actual what it stands for, you may find some supplements that have partial ingredients of what you need to actually have success. So it does stand for activated hexose correlated compound, but you want to look for AHCC specifically, not the long version that I just said. Okay.
Yes, we will do that. Danielle Pashko, thank you so much for the information. We need to be open-minded about holistic nutrition, because it seems like there's a lot in it for us.
Thank you.
Again, that was holistic nutritionist Danielle Pashko speaking there with Life Changing Radio's Randy Berkson on how she and her patients are able to counter long-term after effects from illnesses like COVID or Lyme disease with the help of holistic nutrition. For more information, visit PashkoWellness.com. I'm Matthew Fay. We've got the latest word on our culture from the Colson Center, mission reports from around the world, and Focus on the Family's look at what's worth seeing this weekend. All coming in just a moment here on Weekend Magazine.